Hi, I'm Danielle from Wonderfeet Kids Museum, and today we're going to be making a duct tape wallet. This is my original example. You can see here it opens up, has a pocket at the top, has 4 little pockets here. This is what we're going to be working on. If you are following along, the instructions are in your out of the boxes booklet right here. So I'll try my best to tell the steps as we're going along. And at the end, if you want to share with me what your creations ended up looking like, you can have your mom or dad go to the Wonderfeet Kids Museum Facebook page and they can share your pictures of your creations there. Today I'm going to be using this duct tape and some plain blue duct tape. The other supplies you're going to need are a ruler or a measuring tape. I like to leave mine out on my work surface so that as I'm working, I can be measuring how long my pieces are, because there are some sections of this project where we need to have, kind of rough measurements for. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. Alternately, you could use like an X-Acto knife. You just want to make sure you have a cutting board beneath you if that's what you're choosing to do. And I will say one of the trickiest parts about this project is that we do have to cut the duct tape sometimes into skinnier pieces, like we cut the duct tape in half. And the scissors can get a little bit sticky when we're doing that. So one of the things that I have with me while I'm working on this project are some nail polish remover and some cotton. So that way I can clean off my scissors if I need to. This will take the sticky stuff right off. But maybe we won't need that today. We'll see. If you read, I don't know if you looked over the instructions at all for this project. It's pretty simple. The trickiest part, like I said, is cutting the duct tape. So if you are a smaller person, you might want to have a grown-up help you. If you're not, and you find your duct tape sticking to itself, or you're making, it gets a little crumpled up, don't worry about it. You've got lots of duct tape on your roll. You can just cut a new piece and start again. And even when I was practicing this project to make this duct tape wallet and the one that's in the booklet that you have, I did have to sometimes try a couple times to get my duct tape nice and smooth. So I saw a question. We are going to be using the inches side of our ruler, if that's helpful. So we're going to start out by making the kind of main body of our wallet. And to do that, we're going to start with whatever you want your main color of your wallet to be. I'm going to use for my main color this fun pattern here that looks like name tags. And we're going to start cutting pieces of this that are about 10 inches long. And we're going to build a sheet of duct tape by slightly overlapping them until we have a rectangle that's about 10 inches by 7.5 inches. So if everyone wants to start with whatever their main color is going to be, you can watch how I do this. I'm going to hold it up to my ruler. I see about where the 10-inch mark is, and I go ahead and make a cut. And I'm going to leave this flat on my table, and I'm going to start cutting pieces about the same size and slightly overlapping them. And as you saw when I just did that, it sticks to your fingers. That's totally part of this project that we kind of have to just work through. And it's okay if each piece is a little shorter or a little longer, because we can go back and trim up and make the edges nice and neat once we have all the pieces overlapped. So I'm going to start doing this, and you guys can start doing this on your desks too. Probably overlapping a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. It doesn't need to overlap a whole lot, because we're actually going to do a second side of this, which will reinforce it even more. And if it's, not super straight when you overlap it, again, that also won't matter because you're going to trim it and it's going to get folded. So like some of that stuff won't necessarily show up. Like you won't notice it once you have this all put together. You see how I'm kind of overlapping them so it makes one solid piece? I have about 4 pieces so far done. I'm going to measure to see how big this is so far. So for me, 4 pieces is a little over 5 inches. So I think if I do 1 or 2 more pieces, I should be about where I need to be. And again, how many pieces you need is going to depend on how much you're overlapping them. But that's not as, you know, that's not as important as getting to that final rough measurement. I think I'm going to do 1 more piece just for safe measure. And then we're basically going to repeat this right on top of here so that our duct tape sheet is double-sided. Okay. So you see how that looks? That would be the other side of it. Very chic looking. And I'm going to leave this with the sticky side up. Like I said, our next step is going to be, we're going to repeat the same process with the tape facing down, and that will give us our double-sided sheet of duct tape that we need. Now you can see here, I have a little jumble on the end of my duct tape, so I'm going to have to trim that before I get going to do the second side, but that's how it goes when you're working with duct tape. So whenever you get that done, you can start working on the reverse side. And like I said, you're going to leave that sheet that you have sticky side up, and now we're going to start building right on top of it with our sticky side down now. So you can see how I'm doing that. And we're going to end up with a sheet that has pattern on both sides and no sticky parts exposed. Okay? Yeah, you want to end up with a rectangle area. You want to end up with a rectangle that's about 10 inches by 7.5 or 8 inches. And if it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, that's totally okay. It'll still work for this project. So now you can see I have my rectangle and I have the same pattern on the front and the back. I don't have any sticky bits that are holding up, but as you can see, my edges are not really straight. And that's totally okay, because what we will do before we move on to the next part is I'm just gonna, I'm not even gonna use my ruler to make straight edges. I'm gonna guess on straight edges. I'm throwing caution to the wind, guys. You see, when I flipped mine over, I don't know if you can see this, but I noticed right here, I have a little bit of stickiness that's still exposed. So I have 2 choices. I could either put in another little tiny piece of duct tape there to cut it, to cover it up, or I could just take my scissors and trim it a little bit more. And I think that's what I'm gonna do. But you could do either one. This pattern is so busy, you wouldn't really notice. What we're going for is it's going to fold in half, what I call hot dog way. So kind of long and skinny. And then it will fold in half again, hamburger way. That's short and fat. And then that will be how your wallet works. And we'll close up the edges so that we just have one opening at the top. That's where we're going. But if you have one side that's maybe slightly less wrinkly than the other, you could choose to make that like the outside of your wallet and fold the wrinkles to the inside of the wallet where they would be less noticeable. The next step we're going to do is we're going to trim the top and bottom edges, so the two longer edges of our rectangle. In the booklet, you'll see what I did there was take my contrasting color of duct tape and I actually cut it in half down the middle to make skinnier strips. But I will tell you, that is very tricky to do. Your scissors will definitely get stuck. It might end up crumpled up and you have to try a couple times. So if you are feeling like this duct tape is real tricky stuff, I would say you're gonna do a wider trim and just leave your duct tape the way it is. And that's what I'm gonna do today so you guys can see what that looks like. But if you wanted to, you could create strips that are half as wide and your trim will be a little bit thinner on your duct tape wallet. And that's like, for example, what is happening here. Today my trim's gonna be wider than this for simplicity's sake. So I'm gonna cut two pieces of my second color. You could choose to do this in your original color if you want to. But I have this pretty blue that's gonna match my name tag pattern here. So I'm gonna cut two strips of this about 10 inches long because they're gonna go on either one of my long ends here, okay? And one trick for cutting duct tape that I have found, you can kind of see it in the corner of my screen here, is I'll put it on the edge of my table and stretch it out and have it stay there while I cut it. That tends to work pretty well for me, but you know, duct tape is a material you got to figure out your own flow for. And the way we're going to trim the edge is we're going to take this strip, and it's all right if it's a little bit longer than my rectangle, because again, I can trim it. I'm going to overlap this with the edge about halfway and kind of flatten it down to the top there, and then pick up my rectangle, and you can see here, can you see how like half of my sheet is overlapping this trim and the other half is up there? So that way I can take it and fold it over, and now I have a nice clean edge with no sticky bits of duct tape showing. And you see it's a little bit long on either side, and that's totally okay. So again, I'm going to just take my scissors and trim it up so it's nice and even. And I'm going to do the same thing now on the other long edge of my rectangle. And if you are following along in your booklet, this is step 4 that I'm on right now. So after doing all my trimming, let's see, my wallet is now slightly smaller than 10 inches, so around 9 1/4 inches. And that's okay. Like I said, the size part's pretty flexible. This is how we're going to make our pockets. So we're going to need 4 pieces of tape. I cut my pieces of tape about 8 inches long for each of the pockets because they're going to get folded in half and become a pocket that's about 4 inches. Get it? So 8 folded in half, then it'll be 4. So you want to start by, you can just do this one at a time. Cut a strip of duct tape about 8 inches long. Let's see. I'd hope if I turned my ruler the right direction. Okay. 8 inches long. And I'm going to cut it. And this is another one of those steps that can sometimes get a little sticky and tricky. So here's my strip, just a single strip. It's 8 inches long. I am going to fold it in half on itself so it becomes a strip that's about 4 inches long. And I am probably gonna mess this up a couple of times while I do it, because every time I've made a wallet, that's how it's gone. So I'm gonna do my best to make it as even as possible. Stuck to my fingers. All right. All right. So there we go. I folded it in half. One thing you might notice about my rectangle that I have now folded in half is it's a little bit wrinkly on one end. It's not quite 100% even over here. I got some sticky part that's still hanging out. But you know what? It's gonna be good enough to work for this once I put my trim on and all my pieces are stacked on top of each other. That's not gonna be super noticeable. So I'm gonna still call this one a win and move on to making my next one. I wanna end up with 4 like this. See how it gets stuck to my fingers? This is the hardest step. If we can get through this, we can make it through this, guys. We're all winners. Okay, now, do we see what happened here? Happens to the best of us. I'm not sure if I'm gonna call this one a win. This one's pretty crumpled up. I'm gonna have to try that one again. And I have done this by folding it in half, but the other way to do it would be to cut a piece that's just about 4 inches long and leave it with your sticky side up and then put another piece on top of it. So similar to how we made our original rectangle. I'm gonna try that and see if I have any more success with that method. Who knows? Gotta make this process your own, guys. Well, listen, that one's still a little bit wrinkly, but again, I would say this one is totally usable, knowing how it's gonna look when it all goes together. So as you can see, this one's a little bit wrinkly. I know you were saying some of you were complaining about it being wrinkly. It's all right. So we're gonna all keep working until we get 4 of these little double-sided pieces that are approximately 4 inches in length, give or take. Oh man, that was my best one yet, guys. I don't know. I really got lucky on number 3 there. Technically, it's number 4 because I messed one up, but that's all right. So, yeah. So let's see if I can replicate my success. Remember pressing it down at the middle, at the fold line, and working towards the cut ends, that's going to be a better solution. So give that a try if you're also getting your fingers stuck in there like I am. So as you can see here, I have 4 little pieces. This is what we're working towards. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did with our big rectangle, which is add a trim. Okay? For the pockets, you only need to trim 1 edge. So again, you could do it with your contrasting color, like I could do it with the blue, or I could choose to do my edge with the same pattern that I have been using. But what we're really trying to do is, you know, when you're folding, it's probably not going to be a perfect fold. You're probably going to have a little bit of sticky part that's exposed. And by doing the trim edge where we fold it over and we encapsulate that end, we're making it so our edges are really nice and smooth. And also it gives us a chance to add a little bit more flair to the project if we want to do that. So that's a nice bonus. And we're going to do it the same way we did for our big rectangle, which is cut a piece that's maybe a little bit longer than the section we're trying to trim. We're gonna put it down so it's overlapping and kind of hanging off, and then we'll flip it over and fold it down. So what you'll notice that I just did there, and you might want to try this with yours too, is on the side that's going to be the front of my pocket, I put a little bit, I had a little bit less of my contrasting color overlapping, so I can still see a good portion of that other color. And on the back side, you can see, I see mostly the dark blue. I see only a little bit of my pattern piece. But that gives that illusion that I trimmed this duct tape without having to go through the painful process of actually trimming my duct tape. Hack. And then once I have that trim piece on, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through and cut off the ends to make my ends look nice and neat. And as I'm making my pockets, I do want them to all be the same size. So as I go to trim the edges, what I'm going to do is stack them on top of each other. So I'm cutting them to be all about the same size. You could also measure them, but obviously I'm being lazier than that. So my pockets are starting to, and inside the wallet, they're going to kind of stack on top of each other. So we're going to sort of get this effect. So this is what we're all working towards, having our double-sided rectangle and 4 double-sided pocket pieces. Our next step, once we are all ready, is going to be starting to actually assemble and getting all of our pieces put together. Before we start that, I'm going to take this opportunity to clean my scissors again. And the other thing that I have found comes in handy for this next portion where we're kind of layering and putting everything together is if you have any clothespins or paper clips or even like chip clips in your house, having like 2 clips that you can work with can be really helpful for this next step. If you don't have them, it's not that big of a deal. You'll still be able to do it. It's just kind of like having an extra set of hands that sort of hold things in place for you. So if you've got them, now would be the time to grab them. And since I am conveniently doing this project in my laundry room, I'm going to get some clothespins right now. You could start kind of layering things up to see how they're going to look as you finish your project. So again, working with your big sheet, you're going to fold it so your 2 trimmed edges are touching or lined up. Okay. And for this step, we're going to stop here at our hot dog fold, as I call it. We're not going to do the next fold just yet. And we're going to take our pocket pieces and start layering them on top. So I don't know if you can quite see, if you can't quite see it in the way I'm doing it on the video, you can also see it in the pictures. But so I have one pocket that's going on here, kind of halfway up, and then a second pocket that is layering on, that will be layering on top of that. that the second pocket is going to line up with the fold on the body of my wallet. And we're not attaching anything just yet. This is just for you to kind of get a feel for how things are going to go together. And this is also one of those opportunities where if you have a pocket that's a little bit funky looking, maybe a little bit wrinklier than the others, to make sure that you position it so that pocket is one of the ones that's going to have someone sitting on top of it and not all of its wrinkliness will be showing. So you can kind of finesse things a little bit in this step. And this is where I said, like, if you had clothespins, you could kind of clothespin things in place at this point to kind of get a feel for how it's going to look. See, that's going to be your wallet. The main pocket's going to be up here. Your two smaller pockets are going to be here, where you could put your library card or your school ID or whatever you have. If you're giving this to your mom or dad, they could put their credit card there. So what I'm going to do to prepare for my next step of assembly is I'm going to just cut two small pieces of duct tape. And if for this particular step, it totally does not matter what color you choose, because you won't actually see this. This is going to be like some inside workings. We just need it to hold some things in place. So this is what mine looks like. It's just, you just need a tiny piece. You need it to be smaller than one of your pockets. So if your pocket was about 4 inches, you need it to be less than 4 inches. It doesn't need to be very big at all, because here's what you're going to do with it. I'm going to show it to you right now. So I'm going to just take my clothespin off and remove this top pocket. So again, it's a little bit hard to see with this very busy pattern, but here's the top edge of my wallet. Here's my kind of underneath layer pocket. I'm simply taking a piece of tape and putting it on the bottom here to hold that pocket in place, so that when my wallet is all put together, whatever card I put in here doesn't just fall right through. That's all I'm doing, is just kind of holding that top layer pocket in place. So again, it doesn't matter what color you use. It can be a pretty small piece of duct tape. If it's a funky shape, totally doesn't matter. No one's going to be able to see this piece. This is just for construction purposes. We are starting step 6. That's where we are in the book. And I don't even know if I included this particular, adding these little pieces underneath, because I think the first time I made this wallet, I didn't do this step. And then I realized I needed that it was much more helpful if my top pocket had a little something holding it in place. So you can see when I add my second pocket, how it totally covers up my little slice of duct tape there. So not super important how that piece looks. So what we're going to do next is start to attach these pockets onto the main body of our wallet. Right now they're just kind of sitting on top of there. Now we're going to secure them down. So we're going to start by putting a strip of tape down the middle of our wallet here. That will kind of close down the edges of both sets of our pockets. Again, this is where your creative design style comes in. Do you want the middle part of your wallet to be the same pattern as your body, or do you want it to be with that contrasting color? You can do either one. I think I'm going to do this one for this part, but there's not really a right or a wrong for this part. Your piece of tape is just going to go boop right over the middle there. So you want to cut it a little bit longer than whatever you eyeball that length to be. Because literally all you're gonna do is take it and smash it down right on top. And you see how, can you see here how I have a little bit hanging out off the top and a little bit hanging out off the bottom? That's just what you want, because you're gonna kind of fold those around to secure it. Okay?
What?
So what I have here is, you can see this was my original sheet. It got folded in half. Now my pockets are starting to get secured down on both sides of it. And this up here will be where my big wallet opening is. This is where I can put in my money. So when I stuck down this middle piece of tape, I didn't overlap it over both of these pieces. I only overlapped it over the top piece. So my opening is still open. And if you are following along in your booklet, what we just did, securing the middle edges of our pockets, that was step 6. Our last step is step 7, and that, as Riley pointed out to us, will be securing the other edges. So again, we're gonna cut pieces of tape. I like to work with a piece of tape that's slightly bigger than what I need, because then I know I can just trim off the edges once it's done. We're gonna start by doing the 2 outside edges, and then the last step that we'll do will be the bottom edge. I'm gonna cut a piece. This time, when I fold it over to create that sandwich, this time I wanna make sure I'm getting all of the edge layers. So this last time, I left it open at the top. This time when I do the 2 sides, I wanna make sure I'm sealing in all the layers. So I'm gonna make sure my edges are as close to even as possible. Put my tape down so he's hanging over the edge. Then flip my wallet over and sandwich everything in. And I'm gonna take my scissors, and like I said, trim it up, make it nice and neat. And I'm gonna repeat the same thing on this side now. And then you're gonna do the exact same thing on the bottom edge. You should have here, if you're looking at your wallet, you should have a folded piece, a folded edge of your original rectangle, and then like a little opening. That's the bottom of your pocket. And we're gonna close up, like I said, the bottom of that pocket, because we don't want all of our stuff falling out. And this is where I'm at here. I did find, when I got to this kind of like almost final step, that something I needed to do was take my scissors and I kind of put a little slit at the top of my pocket right here and right here, because when I just sandwiched those in, it kind of ended up shortening my pocket a little bit, and I could not fit my library card in when I went to put my library card in. So I'm gonna go in and just open up those pockets just a teeny bit, and then after I cut it, make sure that the tape is nice and flattened down. And see how it's still, like, when you're looking at it, it still looks like it's all solid one piece, but it actually opens up a little bit more now. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side too. And smooth down my edges as best as I can. So my wallet now looks like this. You can see I have my opening at the top. I have my pockets here. Whoop, whoop. So to use my wallet, all I'm gonna do is fold it in half and shove it in my pocket. That's it. You did it. If you wanted to, if you had like a bit of like those sticky Velcro tabs, you could put like a piece of Velcro on either side here, so when you close your wallet, it like secures itself shut. Those aren't in your box, and I don't have them at my house, so I didn't do that step, but that would be a great step to do. You could add a little Velcro closure on there so it would stay shut.